This last week, I went down to the fields across there, and I was playing Frisbee with a buddy of mine in an evening. It was a beautiful evening. There was a slight breeze, enough to carry the Frisbee, but not enough to make it go all the time. And we're having this beautiful, beautiful conversation back and forth, and just warm sun, cool air, amazing. And over his shoulder, behind him, I watched this guy start to walk across the field. And he's an older gentleman, probably 65, 70 maybe, but he's walking like he's at 95, just really slow and kind of stuttering with his steps like this. And as he came closer, I realized that he was kind of disoriented. He didn't quite know what he's doing. And he walked until he was kind of between Brian and I, and he just kind of stood there and went like this. So we stopped playing Frisbee and turned to him, started to walk towards him, and I said, "Hey, are you okay?" And he just says, "No." And so we stopped what we were doing, and I walked right up to him, and as I got closer, I realized he's got two black eyes, and he's got scabs all over his head like this, like he had fallen face first into gravel, or beat the tar out of and then fell face first into gravel, something like that. So my heart just immediately goes out to this guy, and I said, "What's going on?" And he says, "My back is just so screwed up. It hurts so much." And then he's totally honest, because I could smell a little bit of alcohol in his breath already. And he says, "I'm just going down to the store and I just need some rum." Because he says, "My wife, she's a nurse. She gives me these 2 white pills with some rum. and then I feel better. That's the only thing that helps. It's the only thing that helps." So my heart just broke. And I just said, I'm not going to help you with the rum, but I'd love to help you with your back. Can I pray for you? And he kind of looked at me, and I said, "Pray for you. Can I ask God to touch your back and heal you?" And he says, "Oh, sure." And so I came behind him, and I said, "Show me, where in your back?" And he said, "Oh, right here and here and here." It's like one of those over-the-hedge moments, a little bit here, some there, a whole bunch there. It was like he's just screwed up all the way. And so let's start here. So I prayed in the name of Jesus, and I just, as Jesus commands and has his disciples modeled in the name of Jesus, just back, be well, be straightened and all that. And I said, "Do you feel anything? What's going on?" And he says, "Oh, it's tingling," and right where you were praying. And so I said, "Well, carefully, just try it out." And he starts doing like this, and he has this puzzled look on his face. It's not kinking. And I said, "Well, where else?" And he says, "Well, right here." So I put my hand there, and he goes, "No, here." So now he's excited. He's like, right there, And so I prayed there, and he goes, "Oh," he says, "that one's burning." And so I said, "Oh, well, Jesus is doing something. He's starting to heal your back." And so then he backs up, and he says, "Thank you." And my heart's just pounding for this guy. So my hands on his shoulder, I'm kind of massaging his shoulder. I just met him, but I just "I love you." I just feel the love of Jesus for this man. And then he's still kind of on this, "Okay, so you're not going to help me with the rum." He says, "It's a really long walk." And I still don't know, if I can physically, walk all that distance and then walk. I says, "No, maybe you can't." And he says, "But I really need my rum. I know you're not going to help me with the rum, but maybe you could help." And I said, I'm not going to help you with the rum. And I really don't think it's a good idea. Don't think it's wise for you to do that. And I said, "Why don't you just see how it goes? God's obviously done some things. I think you should go home. I really think you should go home." And so finally he gives up, and he turns around and starts walking home, probably twice as fast as he was walking before. And then there's some pine trees out there in the field, and he saw something in the pine tree, in the wood chips, and he bends down And he picks it up and, okay, something's different. So it was really cool. But and he keeps turning around going, thank you so much. And I was like, it's okay, it's not me, it's God that's touched you. He loves you, he loves you, he loves you. And I'm just wrestling with this moment because you got to ask yourself, what happened to this guy that he's caught in such a bad pattern that he's still got alcohol in his breath and he's thinking, I just need more. I just need more. It's all he knows. And he probably doesn't like it, but what else is he going to do? He doesn't know how to fix it. And nothing would have changed. And I don't know whether he took the change, but at least for that evening, he was headed for rum, and he got turned around by the love of God and sent home. And there's a potential there to start living a different story. That's all it was. And I'm not in control of what he does with this gift that God gave him, but love met him in the middle of that field and gave him an opportunity to stop living the wrong story. So we're talking about this idea of being stuck the last couple of weeks, right? How do you get unstuck? Week 1, that was last week, we talked about specifically when you're stuck and the enemy, that Satan's involved and demons and all that stuff. I have to tell you, and I'm not kidding, when I talk with people and I realize that they're stuck and there's a demonic thing, I actually kind of get excited because that's simple. That's really easy. It's when someone has entrenched themselves in a pattern that they don't know how to break. And we're living, and we all do this. We're living a story that we don't know how to get out of, and it's the wrong story. What do we do then? What do we do then? You know, one of the things that God's been teaching me, I was just telling Matthew this week, is that God's love, this is one of the things he's been teaching me, God's love wants to go where it isn't. It's poised. It wants to go where it isn't. You could say love abhors a vacuum. So wherever it finds a place where there's darkness, it wants to bring light. Wherever there's hopelessness, it wants to bring hope. The love of God wants to go where it isn't. And that's what happened in the middle of the field. It wasn't about my gifts even. It was just the love of God compelling me to reach out to this guy, to offer what I could give. That's all it was. You know, that story reminded me of a blog post I read a number of years ago, and it was a guy, he's not a believer, his name is Seth Godin. He's a marketing and leadership guru. You may have heard of him. He blogs every day online. He's got hundreds of thousands of followers, and every once in a while he says something that you just go, are you sure that you don't have some kind of God background? And I don't think he does, but listen to this. Just think of that story I told you, but also lay it over your own story. Maybe there's a pattern that you're stuck in or a cycle that you keep getting caught in. It could be with the in-laws and you keep having fights at every family gathering and you don't know why. You keep getting sucked into that same old thing. Or maybe it's just a behavioral pattern. Maybe it's an addiction. I don't know what it is, but just think of this, okay? He says, did you wake up fresh today, a new start, a blank slate with resources and opportunities? Or is today yet another day of living out the narrative you've been engaged in for years? For all of us, he says, it's the latter. We maintain our worldview, our biases, our grudges, and our affections, and we nurse our grudges, and we see the very same person and situation in the mirror today that we did yesterday. We may have a tiny break, a bit of freshness, but no, there's no complete fresh start available to us. That's probably his non-God worldview coming into play there. You can see where I'm going to go different today, but that's where he says. He says, marketers have been using this persistence to their advantage forever. They sell us a car or a trip or a service that fits the story we tell ourselves. I don't buy it because it's the right thing for everyone. I buy it because it's right for me, the us I invented, the I that's part of the story I've been telling myself for a long time. The socialite walks into the ski shop and buys a $3,000 ski jacket she'll wear once. Why? Not because she'll stay warmer in it, more in that than a different jacket, but because that's what someone like her does. It's part of her story. In fact, listen to this. it's easier for her to buy the jacket than it is to change her story. If you went to bed as a loyal company man or an impatient entrepreneur or as the put-upon retiree or the lady who lunches, chances are you woke up that way as well, which is certainly safe and easy and consistent and non-confusing, but is it helping? So insightful, hey? It's painful to even consider giving up the narrative we used to navigate our life. We vividly remember the last time we made an investment that didn't match our self-story, the last time we went to the wrong restaurant or acted in the wrong way in a sales call. This is his world. No, that's too risky, so we play it safe and we go back to our story. The truth, though, is that doing what you've been doing is going to get you what you've been getting. The question is, how do we break free from the story we've been living? Years ago, this is actually how what God used to break a really nasty story that I was involved in that involved a chronic migraine kind of lifestyle. And I know that it's different for everybody, but for me, I got this sense like, I don't like this story. I don't want this story. I want to live a different story. And that became part of a process for me to do some things differently, to pray differently. And God used that. And I still get headaches and migraines, but not like nearly what I used to get. But it became which path am I on? Which story am I trying to live? And today, I'm going to introduce you, if you've never met him before, maybe you have, to a guy named Zacchaeus. And Zacchaeus was stuck in a story he didn't know how to change. And Jesus met him in the middle of the field, in a sense, just like I met that guy in the middle of the field. And he gave him an opportunity to change his story. I don't know where that dude that I met, where his story is going to go from now on, but we do know where Zacchaeus' story went because we have a record of it here. I'm going to read the whole story, and then we're going to back up, and we're going to go through it a little bit. It says that Jesus entered Jericho, it's one of the cities that in the region, and was passing through, and a man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he couldn't see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. And all the people saw this and began to mutter, "He's gone to be the guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I've cheated anybody of anything, I'll pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus said to him, "Today, salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost." That is another way of saying, seek and save the lost, is another way of saying love wants to go where it isn't. The love of God wants to go where it isn't. Here's a man that is trapped in a lifestyle that I don't even if he knows how to get out of anymore. And let me explain why I'm saying that. A tax collector in the Jewish culture there would have been something really frowned upon. It'd be like being an IRS agent and your job is to do the impounding and the foreclosing and all of that kind of stuff. So he's the chief tax collector. Zacchaeus is a Jewish name, but it's a Greek version of a Jewish name. So that's really interesting because he's a Jewish boy that got recruited by the Romans, the invading force. So Israel is under Roman occupation. They don't like it. But here's this Jewish boy that's going to work for the enemy, changes his name to sound more like them. And then his job is to collect unfair taxes from his countrymen and give it to the enemy. That's his job. And what we see is he says, I may have cheated people, I may have taken things unfairly. So what was common practice is that the tax collectors, if the Romans would say, everybody, they got to pay $15 each, he would then charge $20 and then pocket the difference plus get paid for doing his job. So he's literally getting rich on the backs of his countrymen. Now, you have to ask yourself, how does a nice Jewish boy get worked into that kind of position? Did you notice what people called him? A sinner. Oh, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like sinner. Like that's such a church word, right? Well, they're just sinners. They're just a bunch of sinners. You know what, though? Here, it's worse than that. He's a traitor. How do you start living the story of a traitor? Can you imagine how lonely he felt? Because the Jewish people hate him because he's a traitor, and he's a sinner, and he's a taker. He takes things from him. He's made a living out of taking from people and taking more than he has to so he can keep it. This is his lifestyle. So he has no friends among the Jews. But do you think the Romans are inviting him for drinks after work? No, this guy is alone. He's not one of them, and he's not a Jew. He's caught in no man's land, literally. He has nowhere to go, no one to talk to. So when Jesus comes to town, and he's trying to see into past the parade to see Jesus, did you notice that he doesn't even think to say, "Excuse me, pardon me, coming through"? He's used to their backs being turned to him. He doesn't even try to squeeze through. He knows they won't let him. They have gotten used to excluding him. He's the outsider. And he's chosen to be the outsider. Just like this guy I met in the field. How do you get yourself into a position where you're 65, 70 years old and you're totally in the cycle of abusing all of this stuff and you're stuck in alcoholism and no one's there to help you and all you can think of is the next drink? How do you get there? It's so heartbreaking. That's why I felt the love of God for him. But this is what's happening with Zacchaeus, I think. Here's this guy, he's so alone. And he hears about this Jesus. Like maybe, I just want to see what he's like. I don't know. No, I just want to see. And then I'm not going to go in deep. I'm not going to invest. I'm not going to, get all excited or anything. I just want to see what he's like. I'm curious. It's like coming in and sitting in the back here, and it's dark and you kind of blend in and you don't have to, and then as soon as it's over, bang, I'm out the back door and I just want to see. I just want to see. But he can't see. So what does he do? Look at this. He does something he never does. I don't have this idea that, Zacchaeus the tree climber. He's not the guy that climbs up and knocks the coconuts down. Like, he's not that guy. He's a tax collector. So this is something he does completely out of character. This is something he doesn't normally do, which sets in motion a chance to live a story he's never lived. Okay? So this is the first thing I want to show you, is to live a different story, you've got to be willing to do something you've never done. The different story isn't going to just suddenly magically break out doing the same thing you've always done. So even a simple act as I am climbing a tree set in motion events that he couldn't have possibly anticipated. It's such an awesome story. So good. So good. I had to throw that in at least once. That's if you're new here, that's my thing. It's so good. So it is. It's so good. So watch this. So when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus." Now, you have to know that this would have been a very interesting moment. I don't know how quickly the words tumbled out of Jesus' mouth, but Zacchaeus is not planning on having all attention on him. He's probably up there in the branches, just looking up, trying to hide, trying to be inconspicuous as he can possibly be. And then Jesus calls him out by name. It's like when you go into a church that you've never been in before, and the pastor goes, "Okay, anybody new here? Raise your hand. Let's just humiliate them now." Like, it's just like, it's like, everyone look what they're wearing. Like, that would be so embarrassing. So he feels like he's got his hand caught in a cookie jar, and you can just imagine the people snickering. First they hear the name, Zacchaeus. What is he doing here? And then they look where Jesus is looking. What are you doing in a tree? And I can just feel the blush coming through and the humiliation rising in his cheeks, where he thinks he's about to get judged again. Okay, great. Now, even Jesus, this prophet in Israel, is going to turn to him and go, "You traitor. How could you betray my people?" And all. You can just feel he's anticipating this, right? Zacchaeus. And then he says, "Come down immediately." And everyone's laughing. You're like, "Come down, come down." It's like, "Is your mother here? Get down from there." You know, that kind of picture. This is what they're expecting. And then Jesus says, "Come down immediately. I must stay." Not just visit. "I must stay at your house today." At my house? Like at my house? Like the porch? No, the house. Like inside the house? Have you ever gotten a phone call from the crazy uncle who lives in BC? And they go, "Hey, we're like 5 minutes away. We've come for the weekend. Woo!" You know, and like 5 minutes, and you're throwing like teddy bears in the dishwasher, and you're just hiding, putting stuff in closets, and you're trying to, hide things. It's like, I can't remember. No, this uncle doesn't drink. Let's hide the alcohol. Like all that kind of stuff. You're just trying to figure out, oh, where's the picture? Where's the picture of his kid? What's her name? What's her name? Yeah, let's put the picture up on the wall. It's like all those things so you make a good appearance. He's got no time. "Come down immediately. We're going to your house." But we're going to, okay. And can you imagine? So just picture this. "To my house with the mahogany coffee table I bought with the money I stole from these people. With the Porsche in the driveway. And the artwork with the sketchy lady in it. And the curtains from Persia, and he's wealthy, right? He is literally rich on the backs of all these people, and everybody kind of knows he's crooked, and now Jesus is going to come here, and he's going to see all that. He must have had a moment where he thought, "Can we just go to Mickey D's? Can we just meet out like at a third space, kind of? Do you have to come to my house?" "Yes, I have to come to your house." "Okay. All right, let's do this." Too late now, right? So here's how it goes. All the people, so he came down at once and didn't do what I just did. He welcomed him gladly. There's only one reason why a person would welcome Jesus gladly into this inner sanctum that I've been trying to hide. It's because I don't like the story I've been living. I don't know how to change it, and maybe letting Jesus in is somehow going to, I don't know, upset the apple cart. Give me a new start. I don't know. He welcomes him gladly. Now, all the people saw this as they leave together, right? And began to mutter, "He's gone to be the guest of a sinner." This is church people behaving badly. Missing the point again. The outsider, the sinner, the traitor. They just picture Jesus has come to town. They throw a big parade, and everyone's like, there's like streamers, and they got the balloon guy, and they got everything happening. And then Jesus stops in the middle of the parade, goes, "Parade's over, I'm just going to his house." And everyone's like, "What are we supposed to do?" "I don't know, go home, that's something." I'm going to his house because I came to seek and save what's lost. So you guys can all just, church people, you can all just deal with it because I'm going to his house. And by the way, I'm going to be the guest of a sinner. Does your picture of Jesus allow for that? Maybe you're the sinner. Maybe you're thinking Jesus would never come and want to be inside of me, live in me. He would never want my life. He would never want to be the guest of this sinner. And you see it right here. He's saying, yes, actually, this is why I came. What else are there? They're just sinners. That's all I got to work with. So if I want to have lunch, I got to go to someone's house, and here it is. At some point, it says, Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I'll pay back 4 times the amount." I don't know if it's when Jesus sat on that really expensive couch and he just saw those two worlds clashing, and he saw his dishonesty in this old life, and he saw Jesus in the middle of it and went, "This doesn't work. I don't want this anymore. I'm going with him." I don't know what it was, but the spell broke. Somehow, in the middle of all of this, watch this. This is what I want you to hear today. Somehow, in the middle of all of this, Jesus got inside the outsider. And when Jesus gets inside the outsider, he doesn't just turn you into an insider. He turns you into the epicenter of his activity in the world. So Zacchaeus doesn't just belong, he is on the mission. He is part of Christ's family, which is why he makes a point. Everyone's calling him a sinner, he's a sinner, he's a sinner. And Jesus says, actually, he's a son. And back then, they wouldn't have called them children of God. He says, children of Abraham. He's a son of Abraham. This guy's a son. He's part of the family just like you. So again, deal with it. He's now a brother. Salvation's come to this house. Now, this is the cool part. And this is what would have to change in the life of this guy that I met on the field. Love started to touch his life. But what needs to happen is Jesus needs to get inside the outsider, turn him inside out, and set him free from himself, to set him free from an identity that he's not meant to live. See, because your story is driven by who you think you are. Just like the blog post I read, your story is driven by who you think you are. Your sense of self is what determines which choices you make. The things you do flow from who you think you are. And he had just gotten into this cycle where he realized, you know what? If I collect taxes, I'm a taker, I might as well take. And what happened when Jesus said, no, you're a son. No, you're not an outsider. I welcome you. You're an insider now. You're part of me. You're welcome. I choose you. I want to be at your house. I want to stay with you. I like you. I want you. I love you. What happens to him? Instantly, the taker is transformed into a giver. He realizes his purpose is not to take, it's to give. And he gets ridiculously generous. So you'll notice that I've never preached, if you've been here a long time, I've never preached on tithing. What I talk about is generosity, but even more than that, I talk about your identity. Because if you understand, if you've given your life to Jesus, you realize you're a daughter of this generous God full of love that wants to go where it isn't. If that takes hold of you, or a son, whatever you are, it changes you. Notice Jesus didn't say, here's what you got to do. He didn't even have to say it. He felt so loved and so welcomed and so turned inside out that he just naturally started letting go of the stuff he'd been hoarding. And he realized, my purpose, I can actually bless people. I can help people. This is why I'm here. Now, you and I need to let Jesus come inside and change who we think we are. None of us are living fully the story that we want to live. And the reason is we're living from an identity we're not meant to live with. We're not fully seeing ourselves the way he sees us and receiving his love like we could. And so the love of God is not naturally flowing out of us like it could. So my question to you today is, what is your primary identity? How do you define yourself? Are you the failure on getting back on the wagon? Or are you the taker? Is your primary identity an accountant? Or a doctor? Or a teacher? Or a barista? Is your primary identity a sinner? Is your primary identity that you're carrying with you, and if you're honest, is shaping your decisions, is I'm an outsider always trying to fit in? Are you saying, I'm the tough guy, that's my identity? I'm the guy who works out at the gym. All of those will shape your story in ways that it's not designed to go. Now, it's not wrong to be an accountant. It's not wrong to go to the gym. It's not wrong to do many of those good things. But if that's your identity, it's going to shape your story. And don't be surprised if it goes somewhere you don't want it to go. So what would it look like for you and I to take our primary identity, our self-concept, what we've used to define ourselves, and submit it to Jesus, to let him in and convince us your primary identity, if you put your faith in Christ, is you are a son. You are a daughter. A daughter or a son of this God that is holy and pure and generous and awesome and radiant, and I'm just like my dad. And I'm going to take up the family business, which happens to be saving the world. Giving myself for the world so that Christ can be made known. What would that look like? You know, every once in a while I tell a story like I did at the beginning of this message. And some of you might look at the story and go, well, that's just Brad being Brad, or you're just a pastor, or maybe that's your gift, praying for people. And I have to tell you, and my kids are, 2 of them are here, they can tell you that I wasn't always this way. And I can also tell you that it's not about feeling like God is saying, thou shalt go pray for people. What's happening is that I'm increasingly understanding that as a son of my Father, full of the love that wants to go where it isn't, that it's the most natural thing in the world to do. There are still moments where I have to get over the fear barrier and I grit my teeth and I go, oh, I can't even believe God, you're asking me to do this. That moment in the field felt just as natural as coming up and giving one of you a hug. It was like I'd known him all my life. It was so easy because it wasn't coming from duty or thou shalt. It was coming from an identity. That's the kind of thing a person like me does. That's why I do it. And as God's convincing me of who I am, more and more of his generosity and his love is flowing through me. And the places in my life where I still don't feel like a son and I'm acting like a slave, or I'm acting like the sinner, or I'm acting, guess what? That's where my story's going. Now, I can just feel, some of you are going, but what, okay, but what do I do? How do I respond? There's only one thing that Zacchaeus did in this whole story to get the ball rolling. And all it was doing something that he'd never done before to get himself into a position where he could see Jesus more clearly. That's all he did. So instead of trying to manufacture a change in your life Or focusing on behavior modification. I got to be more generous, so I've got to give more. And I'm going to, like, instead of doing that, say, Jesus, help me to get myself into a position where you can speak into me and come in and live in my house. Come mess with my stuff. Fill me with your presence so that it shows up all the stuff in me that doesn't belong there anymore, and change my identity, change the way I see myself. Because I want to live a different story. I want to live the story you're trying to write me in. So your question this week is, what can I do to get myself into a better position to see Jesus more clearly? That's where you start. And the next week, we're actually going to talk about how do I more fully embrace this idea of being a daughter or a son? If that's so key, how do I do that? That's next week. Let's pray.